The timer control fires an event at specified time intervals. You could use this to poll, or rather monitor, some resource on the network, like a web service or a web page, or to check something about the local system, or even another application. So you could set the timer to go off every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds, an event would be raised, and you can write code to do something meaningful at that time. It's important to note that there are two timer controls. The first timer control, the one that appears by default in your toolbox, uses the system.windows.forms.timer class under the hood. There's another timer that utilizes the system.timers.timer class under the hood. So what's the difference? Well, the only significant difference is what they were intended to be used for. The Windows.Forms.Timer version, the one you get by default in your toolbox, is only accurate to about 55 milliseconds, which is about 1/20th of a second. While that doesn't seem like a lot, it can add up over hours or days. It's also used primarily for single-threaded applications, like most of the applications that you'll build initially. If you need more precision or need to work in a multi-threaded environment, you may prefer the other control. To make the other control available in your toolbox, go to your toolbox, and in this case I'm just going to go to the General section near the bottom. I'm going to right-click and select Choose Items. In the .NET Framework Components tab, scroll down to get to the Timers, or the letter T, and notice that we have the system.windows.forms added by default. We'll click the system.timers version of the timer control and click OK. What you can also do if you get confused is right-click and select Rename this item in order to remind yourself which version of the timer that you're actually using from your toolbox. Regardless of which timer you use, the timer relies on two things. First of all, you'll need to set the interval, or rather how often it will fire its event. And then secondly, you'll need to write code behind the timed event. In this example, we'll do something fairly simple. As you can see, I have a project called Timer Control CS, and we'll simply show the current date time. The first example is set with an interval of 1 second. So you can see we'll select Windows Forms Timer, and we've set the interval to 1000. So 1000 milliseconds equal 1 second. The second example has an interval of 5000, so every 5 seconds. So while we're simply displaying the current time in this example, keep in mind that this could be used to in a number of capacities. For example, to monitor the state of an application or some resource on the network instead of just updating the label as we'll do here. So let's take a look at the source code. Initially, all we're going to do in the form load event is to set both the system timer label and the WinForm timer label. In other words, these two labels here. We'll set those equal to system.datetime.now, and because we want to view seconds, we'll set it to convert to the long time string in both cases. Whenever the user clicks the start clock, we'll set the enabled property of the Windows Forms timer equal to true. This will begin its countdown. And each time that a second ticks off, because we set the interval equal to 1000, each time that occurs, it will raise an event called the tick event. So we're going to capture that event, and we'll merely update the label.text property equal to our system.datetime.now, again converting that to the long time string. Next, when somebody clicks the start 5-second timer, we'll call the start method on our system timer. Again, this is the more accurate version of our timer. Each 5 seconds, we'll be able to capture an elapsed event. So it's different than the tick event in so much just the name is different, but essentially it's the same thing. And here we'll update the label as well to the current hours, minutes, and seconds using the system.datetime.now.toLong time string. Let's go and run the example just to demonstrate how this works. And we'll start the clock. And this is now using the windows.forms.timer. You can see that every 1 second it elapses. And here we're going to start the 5-second timer. And you'll notice every 5 seconds it begins.